Jacqueline Chung is the Equal Opportunity Manager for the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners. She began her career with Alachua County in September of 1998 in the Equal Opportunity Office and was promoted to Equal Opportunity Supervisor in June of 2002 and Equal Opportunity Manager in May of 2010. She's a graduate of the University of Florida with a master's degree in business administration and received the Certified Public Manager designation from Florida State University in 2007. She received her certification as a professional associate from the National Association of ADA Coordinators in 2013 and is responsible for monitoring organizational compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Ms. Chung has a wealth of experience in issues of equal opportunity, equal access, and diversity. She is responsible for the administration and enforcement of the Alachua County Human Rights Ordinance, Wage Recovery Ordinance, and Small Business Enterprise Program. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here. The work that comes out of your office is so important to residents and county employees alike. Why don't we start just by sharing with our viewers kind of an overview of what you do in your office?
Well, the Equal Opportunity Office was established by the board in 1984, and we are responsible for the administration and enforcement of the county's anti-discrimination policies and ordinance designed to ensure the fair and equitable treatment of citizens and employees in Alachua County.
And I know that involves so many different things, and it's been my pleasure to actually work closely with you on a couple of those issues recently. Why don't we start with equal access to county employment? What does your involvement in that include?
Well, it starts with the application process. Even before folks come on board, we have to ensure that the opportunities for them to apply and be considered fairly, that those things are established by policy. So the county has a policy that prohibits discrimination based on a protected status such as race, religion, gender. And so the entire hiring process has to comply with the non-discrimination policy.
So at a particular point in the hiring process, EO kind of has their stage of that process? Yes,
we review the process before the hire is final.
Gotcha. The county has a lot of programs, and I know for a fact that you're very involved in making sure there is access to those programs.
So along the same lines of employment and prohibiting discrimination based on a protected status, it's the same for access to programs and services, making sure that none of our citizens are discriminated against based on a protected status in the participation in a county program or service. And there's also the issue of accessibility for individuals with disabilities to make sure that all of our programs and services, from public meetings of the county commission to programs within our departments, are accessible to individuals with disabilities.
So where the meeting is held or the program is held is of fundamental importance to you.
Yes.
And to the citizens. I know that you make us put a little blurb on every press release we send out that makes it crystal clear that not only are these things accessible, but if folks can't get to them, we help, right?
Right. If an individual with a disability needs some type of accommodation to participate in one of our public meetings or a program, that information is on the press release so that the public is aware that they have the right to call us and ask for an accommodation in order to participate. And we also have in the commission room, where the meetings are televised, closed captioning of those meetings so that the viewers from home or who are unable to physically attend the meeting and are hearing impaired are able to participate, by using the closed captioning feature. on their television.
Yeah, and you know that's a feature that we worked with you on. I was very happy to do that. We've got big monitors in our boardroom, and one of those monitors, thanks to your efforts, is now dedicated to closed captioning. So not only can folks take advantage of closed captioning at home, but they can come sit in the boardroom and have it right there. And then we also have hearing assist device within the room too.
Yeah.
Some folks just need more volume, and
Right.
we take care of that. I know that there are a lot of regulations involved with your area,
Yes.
and one of the things you do is keep us all in line and make sure all of those federal and other regulations are being complied with. And tell us a little bit about the federal side of this.
On the federal side, the primary one for us in the world of equal opportunity compliance is the 1964 Civil Rights Act. There are several titles. Title VI, for example, covers the programs and services of any entity receiving federal financial assistance. So that would include, us, most local governments would fall under that, receiving federal funds in some way. Then there's Title VII, which covers employment. So anything involving employment discrimination would fall under Title VII. And then there are other federal ones related to civil rights for individuals with disabilities, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right.
And then the state of Florida has its own Civil Rights Act. So our office is responsible for making sure that Alachua County as an organization complies with these federal and state laws.
So Jackie, I know one of the really important things you do is you help all of us, all the county employees, with understanding what accommodations are. And accommodations are not just about being accommodating. I mean, many of them are law. I mean, these are things that are required. Is that something that you also, I know you provide us with that information, but is that a service that you provide to the citizens, to either people with disabilities or employers or just anyone who's interested?
Yes, we provide training. We conduct outreach if anyone needs information on the Americans with Disabilities Act, or a local employer wanting information on, how to accommodate an employee with a disability. They can contact our office for assistance. If a citizen needs an accommodation to participate in a county program or service, they can contact our office as well. Applicants, if somebody needs an accommodation with testing, if testing is a part of an application process.
When they're applying for a job here?
Yes, even as an applicant,
I see.
just off the bat, or if they need some other type of accommodation to participate in the hiring process, they can contact our office for assistance with getting that accommodation in place.
And this is not easy stuff. I mean, one of the things you do in our training is you challenge us to look at maybe some not so run-of-the-mill kind of examples, and you ask the question, does that require an accommodation? And frequently the answer is not what you expect.
And my approach is, when you're faced with a situation where you have to consider an accommodation, to always think first, how can we get to yes?
Right.
As opposed to, no, this might not work, it's going to be too difficult, or here's why it may not work. If we approach it from the, how can we get to yes, to make that accommodation, I think that puts us in a much better position to consider options, even outside the box, that we may not normally think in a traditional sense.
Now, I know it's so funny the way there's so many intersections in all of these things and overlapping things. In addition to, you mentioned accommodation in the hiring process. I know a real priority of the County Commission is also the diversity of its workforce. And I know that that's not an easy subject either, because there are laws and regulations and different things, but I know that you're involved in doing everything that you can to fulfill the County Commission's desire to have a diverse workforce. How are you involved in that?
The EO office conducts a workforce analysis to develop a biannual equal employment opportunity plan for Alachua County. So through this workforce analysis, we look at every county department and identify areas where women and minorities are underrepresented. And then we develop a plan of action to address the areas of underrepresentation. And that's our Equal Employment Opportunity Plan. And that plan is in place for a period of 2 years. In fact, it's actually submitted to the Department of Justice for approval. It's similar to what's known as the Affirmative Action Plan.
Right.
We just call it the Equal Employment Opportunity Plan because we receive funds from Department of Justice, and that's what they call it. Essentially, that's what that is. So once we have these areas of underrepresentation identified, then we create a list of targeted positions where the EO office works with the HR office, Human Resources, to supplement the traditional ways of recruiting to fill those positions by conducting expanded recruitment, reaching out to diverse groups, diverse associations, Hispanic minority professionals, Asian professionals, African American National Forum for Black Public Administrators is one that we use quite a bit in terms of a recruitment resource. And the goal is to increase the diversity of the applicant pool. You know, you can't get to the hire unless you have a good pool.
Right.
So our efforts are focused at the front end on increasing the diversity of the applicant pool.
Right.
And then we provide to the department a good, diverse applicant pool from which they will then conduct the screening and selection process.
Right.
And hopefully, you know, the more we have in numbers, the better opportunities we have to increase the diversity of the workforce on the back end.
And that's a fundamentally important point. It's not that you still don't ultimately hire the most qualified applicant possible, but if you don't have a diverse pool, you never get to
Correct.
the diversity that you're looking
Correct.
for. You know, in addition to kind of teaching the law and making sure people aren't violating the law in our workshops that you do for county employees and others, you also talk about just being inclusive and respectful. Some of it isn't law, quote unquote, but it's just how to have a more graceful and respectful kind of work environment.
Right.
So I wish I had time to really go into some of the fun things that you do at these workshops, but that's an important part of it too, isn't it?
Yes, we have an employee advisory committee, representatives from each county department that work with us in promoting the value of an inclusive and diverse workplace. And so this group gets to work with us on some of the more fun activities. A lot of what we do in EO is regulatory, you know, investigations, compliance, telling departments, you know, what they can and can't do in
I think that's
the area of equal opportunity. But in terms of promoting a welcoming and respectful workplace, we have this advisory committee, and they work with us on putting on the annual diversity luncheon, coordinating brown bags on topics of diversity and inclusion, and these are brown bags throughout the year where employees get the opportunity to take a break from the regular, you know, work day and their work responsibilities to come together and talk, have a discussion on, you know, various topics. Two recent ones that we completed, one on sexual orientation and gender identity or expression, and we did another one on service animals.
Right.
The committee also works with us to produce a quarterly newsletter featuring employees so that we get to know a little bit about the people that we work with, and also articles on topics of diversity and inclusion as well. So these are all ways that we try to help foster that environment of inclusion and a respectful workplace. And from the aspect of education, getting people together and talking, there's the other component when an issue does arise, there's some type of conflict that we get involved in,
Right.
you know, addressing that conflict, taking immediate action and working to resolve issues as promptly as possible.
You know, speaking of conflict, a big part of what your office does is investigations. and I know you do them in a couple of different ways. Tell me about the investigation component of what your office does.
Well, we investigate complaints of discrimination, harassment, wage theft. We have a wage recovery ordinance. Or if there are accessibility concerns from the public in particular, we investigate those to resolve. Again, the effort is to resolve promptly.
And when you say, when you talk about discrimination in a broad sense, you're talking about the Civil Rights Act, but then there's also, there have been additions to that original 1964 Act, and the Human Rights Ordinance, I guess, plays into that as well.
Right. We're responsible for enforcing county policy and county ordinance. So for us, it would be the county's equal opportunity policies with respect to employees. If employees have issues and concerns about discrimination or harassment, we would be investigating under our employee regulations.
Mm-hmm.
For citizens with similar concerns in either their employment situation or housing or as a patron of a local business, they can file a complaint under the Human Rights Ordinance.
Right.
And that ordinance, the board had amended in 2013 to include additional protections, to include sexual orientation and gender identity or expression as protected bases against discrimination in Alachua County.
So that joins race,
religion,
what are all the
age.
Protected categories?
There are several. We have a total of 11
Okay.
in Alachua County under ours, and it's the basic ones such as race, color, national origin, religion,
Right.
marital status, age,
Right.
disability. And in housing only, there's familial status, which is basically families with children.
Or,
that's an
or
additional
vice versa.
protection
You
in-
can't say you're single, so I won't
Correct.
write to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. The wage theft ordinance. That's a recent
Yes.
ordinance, and it went through a very kind of dramatic sequence of events to come to pass in Alachua County, and the state of Florida was involved. The state was considering statewide policy and considering preempting the counties, but through your efforts and the efforts of our delegation, we were able to get Alachua County written in specifically into the statewide ordinance as being able to have our own. So what do you offer our citizens in terms of protection from wage theft?
Well, the county has, and we decided to call ours a wage recovery ordinance. It was known as a wage theft ordinance. I believe we were the third in the state of Florida to adopt one, but because the emphasis is on recovering wages that are due, we decided to call ours a wage recovery ordinance. And it basically provides a local means for employees who performed work for an employer in Alachua County, regardless of where that employer's headquarters may be located. The employer could be out of state, but they're hiring somebody to perform work in Alachua County, so that employee is then covered under our ordinance. And if they were not paid or underpaid wages due, they can file a complaint of wage theft with our office.
So take me through it. Let's say I've been a victim, or I think that I've been a victim of either withheld wages or underpayment of wages. Step by step, what do I do? Do I start with a phone call or a visit to your
A phone
office?
call or a visit. We have an inquiry form online so that someone can also submit. Not a formal complaint online, but just an inquiry, and we will respond, contact that person to get a little bit more information and find out whether or not it's a complaint that would fall under the ordinance. Once they come in and it's established that this is a valid wage theft complaint, the initial efforts by EO staff will be to conciliate that complaint. We send a notice to the employer, inform the employer of the complaint, and our efforts are to ultimately conciliate that complaint, have both parties come to agreement on what's owed, get the monies collected for the employee, and settle that complaint and move on.
So you don't leap right into a complicated legal battle, you have a conversation.
Right. our objective is to conciliate, to settle that complaint at the lowest possible level.
And when did the wage theft become active in Alachua County?
January 1st, 2014.
And what have you learned about those conversations? Do some of them get worked out right at that level? Or do most of them?
Yes. We have formal and informal complaints. Informal for us, if we are able to successfully respond to that complaint just with a phone call before it even gets to the formal, notices and things sent out. That's actually, an area of success for us that we try to, this is our goal, to see what we can resolve at the lowest possible level. Then the next step, if a phone call doesn't get the response we're hoping for, will be the formal notices. Here's a formal complaint that has been filed against you as the employer. The employer has 20 days to respond to that complaint. And again, during that time, either, before the 20 days, an employer may pick up the phone and call us and acknowledge a complaint and say, I may settle it, or disagree that they owe the money. Or unfortunately, we're also experiencing some where they don't deny owing the money, but have been not as willing to come forward and
Gotcha.
pay the monies owed.
So maybe it's settled at that point, but if it's not, what happens once you've gotten the formal response?
If we're unable to conciliate the complaint and it's been determined that we have now reached impasse, there's no further action that we can anticipate coming on this complaint, the employee has the right to request a hearing before a hearing officer.
Right.
And then that puts it into a little, different arena. This is more along the legal lines now.
Right.
And the employer and the employee, they have the opportunity to be heard before a hearing officer who will then, based on the facts presented, make a decision in that complaint.
And if it gets that far and the hearing officer determines that the evidence suggests that a wage violation has occurred, what happens at that point?
The hearing officer will issue a finding, an order, and if the hearing officer finds a violation, then the order can include a directive to reimburse the employee twice the monies owed.
Right.
That's one of the advantages of conciliation, because
Right.
during the conciliation process, we're just focused on the actual monies owed.
Right.
And so whatever the calculation is that we come to agreement between the employee and the employer that this is the money that's owed at this stage, that's what the employer is responsible for paying. If we are not able to conciliate the complaint and we're now in the hearing process, then the employer will now be responsible if they have been found to violate the law. Twice the monies owed, so double the wages due, and also reimburse the county for the administrative cost of the hearing.
From what I've heard in conversations with you, there are times when there's a general misunderstanding or a real misunderstanding and it's fixed.
Yes.
But there are other times where this is actually breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
This is theft.
Yes.
This is withholding somebody's rightfully earned money. And there's a penalty for that potentially. And I know the other part of this whole ordinance is to act as a deterrent to this happening in the first place.
Right.
And we can't keep those statistics, but roughly about how many complaints, formal complaints have there been to your office since this was instituted?
Last year we had 21 complaints, and we were able to collect on 15 of those. We got settled, so that was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's 71%
Right.
there. But we still have, for those that the documentation supports that they have wages owed and the employer is not cooperating, that's still, even with a 71% settlement rate, we're still very much concerned about the employees who have not been able to collect.
Our time is going by so quickly and you do so much. I did want to make sure we talked about the small business enterprise and how your office is involved in that, and kind of a quick summary of what that program is.
The Small Business Enterprise Program is in the purchasing ordinance, and this is an area where the Equal Opportunity Office works with purchasing, and this is designed to help promote the growth and development of our local small businesses. So the ordinance spells out eligibility requirements for a business to be considered a small business in Alachua County.
Right.
They have to have 25 or fewer full-time employees, $1 million or less in net worth, and be located in what we call the SBE zone.
Right.
The SBE zone is Alachua County and the bordering counties, so it's a group of 9 that make up our SBE zone. The program has a 15% participation goal, so on all of our bids and RFPs, we are looking for 15% participation by our certified SBEs. So if
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We're going to put your number up, and if folks want to know the details on the small business program, they can call you.
Contact our office.
I just have one other thing, because we're about out of time. I just wanted to make sure the public knows about all of your public education you do. You post notices in county buildings about equal opportunity laws. You keep us all, stocked with equal opportunity things to put up on our workshops or on our boards. I know you do an annual ADA Expo,
yes,
and I know that's very important. We're going to put a list of all of these things graphically on the screen for folks to give you a call about. But unfortunately, time flew by, and we are out of time. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed the opportunity to talk about the EO program.
Thank you, and we'll have to have you back to go into more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
This is Anthony. Anthony is wanted everywhere.
Anthony's on my team. No, he's on my team.
Anthony?
5.
Good answer.
Anthony, will you sit here and play for me?
Sure.
Yes, Anthony is wanted everywhere. Well, almost everywhere. Because recently, when Anthony went with his parents to find a new place to live,
It's already rented.
I just spoke to this guy a half hour ago.
how can his parents tell him the color of their skin is keeping them from this apartment? It's not just unfair, it's illegal.
I'd like to file a complaint.
So Anthony's parents filed a housing discrimination complaint. And now, they have a wonderful place to live. If you've been trying to buy or rent a home or apartment and you believe you've been discriminated against because of your race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, or disability, call HUD at 1-800-669-9777 or visit hud.gov/fairhousing. Fair housing is your right. Use it.
We used to write letters to each other a lot. A lot of the notes, they were just really dark.
Expressions of anger. When he was mad, he hit things.
Said something to me about killing himself.
You have to take it seriously. The risk is too great.
You have to try and help them get help.
Tell somebody, tell an adult, counselor, parent, whatever.
What are you going to do? Let them destroy themselves? I don't see much of a choice at all.